October surprise, you've heard that term. It's political slang for a damaging news story that appears in the final days of a campaign. This year we had one of the biggest October surprises ever. The New York Post, that's the oldest daily newspaper in this country, published a trove of documents showing that members of Joe Biden's family have been selling access to the former vice president to a number of foreign governments, including the Communist government of China. Now, that's a blockbuster. But the rest of the media decided to kill it before you could read it. Social media companies banned their users from sharing the New York Post's reporting. Other news organizations simply ignored it. On October 22nd, that was 11 days before the presidential election, National Public Radio, or an organization that is literally state media, funded against your will by your tax dollars, issued the following statement through its public editor. NPR explained that they would not say anything negative about the Bidens, and here's why. Quote, "We don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories, and we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions." End quote. Now you're probably thinking, that is the single dumbest, most dishonest, high-handed, infuriatingly arrogant thing I have ever heard. But if you feel that way, obviously you don't watch CNN. On that same day, October 22nd, an RNC spokeswoman called Liz Harrington made the mistake of submitting to an interview with Christiane Amanpour. Harrington had hoped to talk about the Bidens' business deals. Amanpour is, and we're quoting here, CNN's chief international anchor. Here's how it went.
As you know perfectly well, I'm a journalist and a reporter, and I follow the facts. And there has never been any issues in terms of corruption. Now, let me ask you this. Yesterday, the FBI...
Wait. How do you know that?
I'm talking about reporting and any evidence. I'm talking to you now.
Okay, I would love if you guys would start doing that digging and start doing that verification.
No, we're not going to do your work for you. I want to ask you a question. The FBI,
it's a journalist's job. It's a journalist's job to find out if this is verified.
As you know perfectly well, I am a journalist and a reporter, says Christiane Amanpour, who, of course, is neither of those things and never has been. Christiane Amanpour is a celebrity script reader, a half-wit whose self-esteem far outpaces her accomplishments. She is also, it turns out, the personal flack for the Biden Family International Finance Corporation. That's not in her Twitter bio, but it's pretty obvious. There have never been any issues of corruption with the Bidens, Amanpour announced, as if she hadn't just been confronted with some. And so it went, just like that, across the entire American news media until the presidential election. Now, 6 weeks later, it is finally safe to speak freely, and so the truth is coming out. We now know the New York Post was right all along, and so was poor Liz Harrington of the RNC. Yesterday, millions of Americans learned, some for the very first time, that the Biden family has indeed been deeply enmeshed in a series of sleazy international business deals that undercut America's core interests. We learned that there is an active federal criminal investigation into Joe Biden's son, Hunter, for that very reason. What's interesting is how we found this out. The media didn't tell us. Neither did the Justice Department. Hunter Biden has far better connections than, say, Roger Stone. Hunter Biden was allowed to tell his own story. He wasn't rousted from bed at 5 a.m. by dozens of armed paramilitaries, his arrest in his boxer shorts carried live on CNN. No. He's a prominent Democrat, so he's spared those humiliations. Instead, the Biden-Harris transition team broke the news in the form of a bizarre press release that informed us with a straight face that Joe Biden was, quote, deeply proud of his boy Hunter, who, by the way, may have had some minor tax trouble that he will clear up soon the minute his accountant returns from Cabo. But no big deal. Happy holidays. Okay, guys, thanks for the heads up. But actually, and you may have guessed this part, turns out there's more. A report in Politico today reveals that Joe Biden's younger brother, Jimmy, is involved too. This was a family business, keep in mind. Jimmy Biden is also under federal criminal investigation for corruption in the hospital business. We don't know more than that, and we should stress that fast Jimmy Biden is presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law by a jury of his peers. Jimmy is not a felon yet. We will keep you updated. Glenn Greenwald is an independent journalist. He left his former job over this story. He resigned in protest because he wasn't allowed to report on it. He joins us tonight with Reaction. Glenn, thanks so much for coming on. You can make the argument that these charges aren't a big deal, that we shouldn't care. I mean, people could make, I think, a legitimate argument. You can't pretend this didn't happen, and yet it was just last month that you were attacked personally. A lot of people were attacked even for bringing it up. What's your reaction now that you've been vindicated?
Well, I still think we need to recognize what a historic crime and disgrace this is, not only in journalism, but as soon as these documents became known, the operatives in the intelligence community, the CIA, John Brennan, James Clapper, Michael Hayden, all the standard professional liars issued a letter claiming that this material was the hallmark of Russian information, disinformation, actually, even though they had no basis for thinking that. And that gave the media permission to lie to the public continuously, and Silicon Valley to censor these materials. So not only did the public not become aware of them, they were lied to, not only by claiming that Russia was involved, even though there's zero evidence that they were and no one thinks that, but also by calling it disinformation. The implication was these documents were forgeries, when now we know that the criminal investigation that's been ongoing is about the very transactions that these documents covered. This is an incredible crime by the corporate media to lie to the public and bury information before an election, but also, again, domestic interference on the part of intelligence agencies in order to manipulate the outcome of our election.
It was only 10 or 15 years ago that big news organizations like the New York Times, NBC, CNN reported on our own intelligence services with some level of skepticism, because they're powerful institutions and you need to keep them in check. That's our job. Why don't they anymore, do you think?
Well, I think that the intelligence services in the Trump era became one of the leading bulwarks against the Trump movement. And so the media partnered with them based on the premise that the Trump presidency was dangerous, which is fine. If the media really wants to believe that the Trump presidency poses a danger, that's their prerogative. But what they don't have the right to do is to become disinformation agents. And the CIA and all of those guys in the intelligence community were open about the fact that they wanted Donald Trump to lose, and then they wanted to sabotage his presidency. Remember, Chuck Schumer told Rachel Maddow in early 2017 that the CIA was going to sabotage Trump's presidency if he continued to criticize him. And that was the story of the last 4 years, a union between the intelligence agencies that fed lies to the media that mindlessly repeated it for their own interests.
You tangled years ago with our intelligence agencies. You've been saying this for a long time. A lot of people didn't believe you. My apologies for that. You turned out to be right. Glenn Greenwald, great to see you.
Thanks, Tucker.